right, so we can hop into this new DASH funding opportunity. First, my name is Stephanie Johnson. I am the project manager for this incubator project on DASH. And I'm sure that most of you are aware, but in case there are any new faces, the Illinois and Michigan Public Health Institutes co-create the Data Across Sectors for Health Program Office, known as the DASH-PO, to support collaborations that work together to improve the health of their communities and promote health equity by strengthening information sharing systems, partnering with additional sectors and community members, and building sustainable capacity to work collaboratively toward community goals. The DASH-PO translates lessons learned from awardees to create a body of knowledge and leverage peer-to-peer and network connection opportunities to spread innovative approaches that address the root causes of inequity at individual, local, and policy levels. And DASH is funded by the by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So the purpose of today's webinar is to introduce the Incubator, a unique grant and support program for past grantees interested in advancing equity in data governance and policy efforts. DASH aims to support the development of equitable governance and data-driven initiatives with the ultimate goal of large-scale systems change. With the Incubator, DASH aims to advance equity both through program impact and through the grant-making process. To that end, the Incubator is not a conventional grant providing participating organizations with resource and expertise alone. It is a funding and support collaboration where participating organizations co-design the meaningful work that they then implement. So an agenda for today, we're going to try to at least cover some of the DASH framework, DASH learning, our current DASH phase 4, and this new funding opportunity called the Incubator. So to kind of set the scene, to provide some background information, I want to first present the DASH framework. Through awardee insights, our national inventory survey, the All-In Network, and thought partners, DASH has identified key factors which are important for sharing and using data across sectors and with communities to support more equitable systems that create the conditions for health and well-being. So in this latest version of the DASH framework, Building Equitable Data Ecosystems for Fostering Community Health, we dive deeper into how equity as a process and outcome intersects with data ecosystems and a data infrastructure that is built to unlock the power of data ecosystems towards social good. The framework also includes fundamental components and intersections of data sharing, like factors that support strong data sharing foundations and recommended components of data ecosystems that facilitate equitable data sharing. And the factors that we've identified relate to building foundation with community, multi-sector community data ecosystems centering equity, market and policy forces, and systems change. By connecting information systems and sharing data across sectors, particularly in ways that are community-driven and accountable to community members, meaningful, sustainable, and equitable community health improvements are possible. And we hope that this framework supports community capacity to communicate about foundational components of data sharing, to engage with future partners and with community members, and serves as a resource to guide discussions to celebrate and act on both strengths and opportunities for improvement as a whole community. So next, I'll highlight the components of the DASH framework that we'll be focusing on with this funding opportunity. And the first is community data ecosystems, and what we are referring to as equitable data ecosystems. It might even come up as EDE in this presentation, but from our learnings, data ecosystems are made up of the who, the what, and the how that enables sharing data and collaboration within a community. During this round of DASH programming, we will be focusing on how data governance can ensure data systems focus on equity and also reinforce the community foundations through building trust and transparency. as well as on preparing communities to inform policy for systems change at both the local and state levels. And we define data governance, the people, policies, and procedures that support how data are managed, used, and protected. And we will also be focusing on centering equity throughout. So centering equity throughout the data processes requires considerations of who benefits and who is at risk, who has access, who decides who decides what the data are used for and what stories they tell. So DASH has kind of embraced a different vision. Community involvement leads to more appropriate assessment and balance of the benefits with the potential harm of data sharing for different groups. And data supporting adoption of just policy and practice, addressing power by holding systems accountable, and authentic narratives of community that support mental models that identify root causes of inequity. And the next component that we'll be focusing on in this round is policy and market forces, but specifically policy. And we have kind of defined this as actors in community data ecosystems that are operating in markets that exert powerful forces on competition and collaboration, as well as state, federal, and local government policy impacting the data ecosystem and vice versa. And then, excuse me, finally, a systems change. And that's the last component. And changing systems requires addressing root causes of inequity resulting from complex interacting parts. And changing system requires, like I said, addressing root causes of inequity, and DASH supports data sharing as it operates on these layers of systems change in supporting more equitable policies, practices, and resource flows, and in promoting underlying relationships and distributions of power impacting the narrative that describes how we understand equity. So for DASH learning and specific, so we're going to go over some past DASH awardee learning and also other things that have influenced this new funding opportunity. Excuse me. I don't know where this is coming from. I've been fine all day. Okay. So the first part of what has impacted and influenced how we're moving forward with this programming is the FSG Waters of Systems Change. And this was published in 2018. And in this article, they identify the conditions needed for systems change. And they found that multiple processes need to occur to shift the conditions that reinforce inequity. These are the conditions that lead to a particular outcome. And by changing these conditions, we can produce better community outcomes. So the incubator will touch on multiple, if not all, areas of this model, but will really focus on policies, practices, excuse me, practices and mental models. Another thing that has influenced this programming and how we've designed it is some of the data that we have from our national inventory that we did a couple years ago. And I'm not going to dive too deep into this table here, but I just wanted to show the involvement that we captured of people with lived experience in data sharing and at which stage of data sharing they are involved at. So in this slide and in this next slide, you can see that the involvement of people with lived experience is on that, and I'll go back, is not very large at the beginning. It's usually more towards at the end. And so the point of showing this slide is because this is what has informed our programming and our intention of how we have designed this incubator opportunity and being a co-design with community. And so, as I had said, past DASH programming has definitely influenced how we're moving forward. And our current funding opportunity is kind of an attempt to weave the most applicable learnings from prior programming into support for the types of activities we want to do moving forward, like centering equity, sharing power, and elevating best practices for equitable data ecosystems. And just to name off a few, some of you might have even participated in these, is the LAP, the Learning in Action and Policy and Partnerships Program, where we help community partners that were engaged in data sharing projects to connect with state policymakers. The ABCD, or the Asset-Based Community Development Program, which funded community collaborations with the aim of identifying interventions that can combat health disparities in communities that have been historically and systemically denied a full opportunity to participate in aspects of economic, social, and civic life. And the Mentor-Mentee Program. And under this program, 7 experienced mentor organizations offer coaching and peer-to-peer learning to small groups of mentee organizations to help them develop their own data sharing abilities. And not mentioned are the Kick Cohort and the Kickstart programs. And so the Kickstart was designed to help local collaborations build on their ongoing efforts to share and use multi-sector data to improve community health, recognizing the value of learning from others. The Kick Cohort program made peer learning its primary focus. The projects pursued either racial health equity within the development of data systems, or they were community-based social services organizations leading collaborative efforts to develop data systems that improve the health of communities. So on to DASH Phase 4, which is our current phase of funding through RWJF through 2025. Our current learning priorities are to foster community capacity for equitable data ecosystems, to build equitable data governance, and in leveraging equitable data ecosystems for systems change. And a few priorities, learning priorities that are not listed, are centering community in grant making, centering grantees in learning and translation, and shared peer learning spaces. So these learning priorities and the high-level questions under each have been and will continue to be informed by insights from our grantees and the field. DASH uses these to inform our programming as well as to what to document, translate, and highlight learnings along the way. And those in the incubator will be informing and learning alongside us as we translate and share insights. So in this DASH Phase 4, we have 3 objectives. The first objective is to support equitable data ecosystem development that holds public health, healthcare, and social services systems accountable to community members and holds states accountable to communities aligning across sectors for health equity. And this objective one is where the incubator is living. So we can jump on into the incubator. The incubator is a catch-all name for our community funding and support program that seeks to discover, test, and model a collaborative funding program focused on equitable governance and data-driven initiatives, including determining how to provide funding and support at a local level that can translate to systems change on a larger scale. Equitable data governance is a factor in all systems and sectors that interact with data. And currently, public health and healthcare are prone to working in silos, even as the importance of centering equity and engaging community is increasingly recognized. Equitable data governance models will alleviate the harm those silos pose to communities by offering best practices of how and when to invite people with lived experience into data and informed sharing processes. So our intention with this programming is to more effective, for DASH programming to more effectively be directed at supporting equitable systems change efforts to share assets with communities to support equitable community level data sharing work and build capacity at the implementation level to directly inform policy, to support to develop governance and capacity for equitable data ecosystems and identify or create adaptable and replicable governance models, which we hope results in CBOs having more power to lead, define data sharing governance initiatives. Community members have a more equitable say in how data are collected, shared, and used, and community members having leadership roles in the data ecosystem. And so the expected impact of the incubator is that organizations and collaborations often shut out of traditional funding opportunities will have a greater visibility and capacity to pursue sustained investment. We also expect new models of philanthropic support demonstrating commitment to equity, measurable data governance practice adopted by community stakeholders that maximize benefits and minimize harm for people who have been traditionally excluded or marginalized. We expect data are more likely to be used for true narrative and systems change, and that states will understand and act on community articulated needs for and from, for and from the shared data. So the incubator should strive for internal programmatic equity, as well as understand how to promote equitable data ecosystems. It's an all teach, all learn model with nothing wasted on ticking a box. The deeper relationships and peer coaching connections are as valuable as cash. The incubator will provide and rely on aha moments, and the recipients want operational cash, not necessarily new projects. So the offer is payment for time, opportunity to learn about the landscape, and an opportunity to design the program and cohort. So that leads me to what's included. In the incubator, we will be co-designing. We will have peer-to-peer sharing and learning. We'll have subject matter expertise / mentor guidance and support. And we will also have DASH staff, technical assistance, and support. And this will really be an opportunity to co-design your own journey through the incubator. And we still like to provide that space where communities, these organizations with their community members can share and learn from each other. And the national thought partners and mentors will be able to provide support and guidance around data governance, policy, and equity, and kind of like a coaching model. And then of course, DASH staff can support and facilitate the space to connect the dots and to address any challenges and barriers that may arise. So this is a picture of kind of what's in our heads of how this funding will be used. So we'll have funding coming from DASH, and it will be going towards coaching the organization and to pay community members to participate in the incubator. I want to just emphasize that so first is it's our concept of equitable grant making. And for equitable grant making, we kind of need to be a little bit more flexible with how we use these funds. And so we have general estimates of funds, as in about 350,000 for contracting and about 500,000 for regranting. And we are planning on accepting and funding around 10 to 12 organizations, and we have this limited number that will allow us to provide more hands-on, to provide a more hands-on approach, and it will also be a little bit more manageable for our subject matter experts that are coming in to help mentor and coach. So the incubator is split up into kind of 4 different phases. The first phase is right now, and we'll continue on until we invite organizations to participate. And this is really mostly the planning phase, is DASH staff convening with each other and then extending invites to folks that we would like to invite on to participate, these organizations. So once we invite the organizations on to participate in the incubator, we'll then be kind of in the expand phase. And this is where those organizations will invite 1 to 2 community members that they already have a built relationship with. They already have that foundation established. And then once these community members come into the incubator, that is when you start to kind of co-design. That's when you get to decide your journey and what to do with these funds. So you can choose one coach, multiple coaches. You get to decide how much is going to your organization. So that is really where like the co-design and how you even implement the support that you receive into your organization. That is to be co-designed with the community members. So the final phase, the 4th phase, is the implementation phase. This is where you take what you created and then you get to implement it, and we're here to support you. And that will go on until, actually, I have a timeline slide so we can, that will go on for at least the middle of 2025. So that's kind of the length of the grant, and I'll show that in a slide in a minute. So this just kind of elaborates on the co-design aspect that we have. It really was kind of very central to this funding opportunity. And we believe very strongly, back from our national inventory slide that I had showed, of when people with like lived experience are involved in the data sharing processes, to make it most equitable, we believe that the people with lived experience in community members, folks that will be experiencing the impact of the projects, of the things that you're doing in the community, should be involved at the beginning in that planning phase. So this is our attempt to make this work within the community a little bit more equitable. And so I kind of expand on it in this slide, but it really is a focus. The incubator participants will focus on the way data is governed and utilized to inform policy that will heavily influence health outcomes, like social and environmental factors, like racism and access to food and housing. And the incubator participants will also determine which technical assistance and subject matter expertise will be most beneficial for their work plan, and how they would like to utilize the resources, services, and supports. So the subject matter expertise domains include that this is kind of just like a pointed list of the general areas. We're still working on getting these subject matter expertise, or like these mentors or coaches, to come in, but this is kind of where their domains will be. It's data governance, policy, and equity. When it comes to specifically data sharing. And so here is the timeline that I promised. It's a very rough timeline. This is an estimate. So around like now to October, we have like, we'll request information, we'll review that, whatever is sent in, and then we'll be making an award announcement. That will probably happen in October, late October to November. So in November, the DASH and the funded organizations will meet and learn more about this funding opportunity, and then you'll be starting to take the next steps of expanding. So this is in the expansion phase, when we are inviting 1 to 2 community members onto the incubator, and that's going to happen in around December, maybe January. I know we're kind of getting into the season when folks take time off of work, so we recognize that this is probably going to be kept as more of an estimate. We don't have to stick exactly to this timeline. And then in January, I'm hoping that we can start kind of working with the community members and starting to design this funding opportunity, your journey through the incubator. And then in March, I'm planning in about 2, maybe 3 months for planning. for designing. And then in spring 2024, we'll start implementing. And then, of course, I have when the funding ends, which is estimated to be around June 2025, with deliverables due around August. So I tried to put time commitment estimates on paper, but as this is more of a co-design process, these are very much an estimate, just to get our brains going, you know, to start getting creative, because this isn't set in stone at all. So during the plan and expand phase, we're estimating about 4 hours per month for 2 months. And this is including planning with Dash staff and as well as communication with the community members. In the design phase, that's going to take maybe a little bit longer. And so we're estimating at about 6 hours per month for 2 to 3 months. And then where you really get to design your project is during the implementation phase. So this might look different for each organization, but we're planning on one-to-one sessions with the coach/mentor, peer-to-peer sessions with the whole group so we can learn from each other, and then one-on-one sessions if needed with Dash program staff so we can kind of be that bridge of implementing and kind of sense making and making connections across teams. So that is also an option. So how to get involved. The request for information will be sent out to those interested, which right now is going to be the registration list for this webinar. The RFI will include questions with that are equity and sustainability focused to be kind of like indicators, along with space to share information on the desired impact. So part of this programming is kind of, if you've been involved in past Dash programming, is we kind of were building capacity to share data across multiple sectors. That was like the first several years of Dash. Now we're kind of building on that first in our framework, that first box to the middle box, and kind of like on and kind of building off of those relationships, which is why we've said past grantees is part of what makes you eligible, is because we are building off of our relationship that we have with past awardees to then continue our work and their work. So it's really, it's a natural build off of where we have been and what we have done. And so with this, there is no application page. And to express interest, you either registered for this webinar. All registrants will receive an invite if you are a past grantee of Dash. However, to those that missed the registration but would still like to express their interest, you just email me at sjohnson@mphi.org. That's sjohnson@mphi.org. And the intention with this is to make the process a little less formal, and to make it more of a conversation rather than like an application process. So I just wanted to share some of the equity and sustainability focused indicators that we'll be using / considering for the request for information and inviting you onto the incubator. Because this is really kind of building off of the first foundation of building relationships, we would kind of already want you to have equity processes and procedures in place. We want you to already have that relationship with the community members already established. And so kind of, you know, like you are already knowledgeable of equity practices and are working on building them into your work. And then we'll also be asking about sustainability indicators. And this is just asking about partners and kind kind of like what your next steps are after this, and any type of long-term agreements between data sharing partners. We just kind of want to get a feel of where you're at in terms of sustainability, just to make sure that this can keep going, this work can keep going. One example is like in terms of sustainability, we purposely will be splitting up the funding rather than just giving the organization all of the funding to create a not sustainable position. Rather than that, this is just an example of where, like we have intentionally set it up so that funding is dispersed across. And so it kind of helps with that sustainability piece. So now we can jump into Q&A. I will advance the slide though. So if you want to express interest in this programming opportunity, email me. And if you want to access reference resources that I had referenced in the beginning, or just for more information on past Dash programming, visit dashconnect.org. That is where you will also be able to find the recording of this webinar along with the slides and the transcription, and possibly even a longer, more in-depth recording. We'll see. So I'll go ahead and leave it on the slide. And I will now open it up for Q&A. I'm just not seeing the chat. Okay, sorry, I may have missed this in the documentation, but how will you be calculating the funding amounts needed for staff, organizations, and community members to participate? So we have this bucket of funding, and this is, I kind of touched on this in that this is intentionally kept very flexible and kind of vague, which I know can be frustrating. But we have this bucket of funding for contracting, and then we have this bucket for regranting. And we will be, depending on how many communities we take in, I'm assuming it's going to be around 10 to 12. So that's where we'll be dividing it up. But it also kind of depends on how you design your own program. If you, like I kind of alluded to, we'll kind of be capping the amount that you can take in within your own organization. The point of this programming is also to like provide resources to kind of like get you to the next step, to provide those aha moments. If we jump all the way back to close to the beginning in the months, the FSG Waters of Systems Change model, mental models are that big chunk on the very bottom of the pyramid. And so mental models, changing mental models is really foundational for this work, for equitable systems change. And aha moments, changing mental models does not cost a lot of money. So that's kind of where our stance is on it, is that we're going to give you funds to like pay for your time and energy spent in this, and then we're going to give you money to essentially pay for coaching, and to also be able to pay the community members that come in to help for their time. So for the coaching, we'll be offering it. It's kind of a la carte. We're going to make some recommendations, but we're going to have those 3 domains, coaches within those, and like mentors within those 3 domains of data governance, policy, and equity. And so depending on, there's going to be an initial kind of like assessment just to figure out maybe where your strengths are, and then maybe where we need a little extra support. And so we can make recommendations based off of that initial assessment. But then that's where you get to choose which mentors and which coaches you go for. And so that really is, it's very much part of the co-design process. Are there any other questions? So will the coaching be on an organizational basis or for groups of organizations? Excuse me. So this, I think, is where we would probably say it's going to be more for the participants of the incubator. So as not to overwhelm the coaches and to make it a workable group, like with like 3 to 4 people, that's like a workable group. Any bigger, and then we're kind of getting out of that workable space. So really, I think it's the participants in the incubator, part of the organizations, and your community members and the coaches, and then possibly a dash staff just to be there. And then it's up to you if you want to take what you learned and what you know into your organization, which is the intention. So you take that to your organization to then implement. So it might depend on who you have, within that coaching session. If you are like, maybe, okay, well, I need like maybe 3 people from my organization to make this doable, that's totally fine. But the point is to really make it like an intimate, very much one-on-one session. Obviously, it'll be the organization and the coach, and the community members. So we just don't want the group to get too big. But that definitely is. So I don't want to say I'm against a one size fits all model, but I'm really open to this being a conversation too. So, and that's part of the general and the vagueness of this programming, is that I think it's more on like a case by case basis. Another reason why we're keeping it so small in number is because we want to be able to provide that support and to have those conversations with you to learn what would be most beneficial for you. So it is definitely part of the conversation. What else? Any other questions, maybe comments, initial feelings? Do you think it is reasonable to expect that community members who participate could be supported at a rate of 100 to 150 per hour? Example, similar to what other consultants might charge. So I think that's something that that we can talk about, what we can figure out. The purpose of this structure is to be able to pay community members as they are the subject matter experts in their own areas of expertise. So I actually was very resistant to even using the terminology subject matter expert, because it's implicit, like the power is implicit in that terminology, for me at least. So that's why we're saying mentors and coaches, but we do expect to reimburse for a fair amount, a fair rate for the community members who are spending time on this within this work. That is also a reason why we are limiting, I don't want to say limiting, but we strongly advise that the organization spend the majority of the dollars on coaching and paying people with lived experience. Because what we don't want to happen is a position gets created for the person with lived experience, for the community members, and then it's terminated when the funding stops. So that's something that's kind of what, when I was talking to that about that sustainability piece, that is our intention. And so we will definitely work with you in terms of exact rates, I'm not sure right now. But it's definitely going to be a fair rate, like fairly compensated. Is the funding for the co-design part separate from the implementation part, or are they lumped together? So in this part, I believe that they are separate. But it's kind of like, so the organizations receive funding and the community members are also being paid. We also, we like have this pot of money for the coaching and the mentoring that is part of this programming. So it is in a sense separate. But regardless, there's like one set of there's one set of funds that's coming in, and then how we separate it out just kind of depends on each person will be getting a similar amount, but how you use it within your own project, like your own design, depends on you. And then Melissa, I know that you probably might have a better way of explaining that than I do. So if I didn't explain that adequately, feel free to jump in.
Well, adequacy aside, I think that it is a tricky concept, but I like to think of it that participants in the co-design process will be compensated for their time. And to your response to Mark, absolutely, we expect it to be fair regardless of the type of participant engaging in the co-design. And then the implementation component, or the re-granting funds would be could be thought of as the implementation component. The only the we're still trying to maintain maximum flexibility for the different types of implementations or uses for the regranting money. But I think it does help a little bit to think of it as the co-design process is compensated, and then there's then support funding and other supports for the actual implementation component. I hope that's a little more clear.
Any other questions or initial thoughts, reactions to this funding opportunity? I'm definitely okay with quiet time as well. When is the RFI expected to come out? When I get it done. Hopefully that is by within the end of the month. I'm hoping. It's the intention is to kind of make it a more informal information gathering, just to kind of get a better idea of who it is that wants to participate. And just to make sure that the equity piece and the sustainability pieces are a little bit more in place than in our previous funding years, so that we can kind of build on those pieces to continue forward in data governance and informing policies. So I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks. And so we'll be making an announcement. You'll be able to find it on the it's actually more of like an invite. I don't want to say it's an invite only, but for those folks that registered for this, and then I want to post the webinar and the presentation on the website, just in case someone missed the registration for this. But it really is like whoever registered for this will be receiving an email from us with the RF, with like the request for information. So it's a little bit more informal in that way. This really wasn't supposed to be an opportunity that we shared far and wide. So I'm actually surprised. I'm so happy all of you read the newsletter, because I think that was one of the only places we posted the announcement. So I was really excited to see how many registered, but it really is like 10 to 12 people's organizations. So yeah, so we will be posting the webinar and the presentation, and then I'd like to give about like another week, maybe 2 weeks, and then we'll send out the email with the RFI requesting the information. And it will, like I said, just be a general, tell us where you are in your data sharing kind of efforts, and then asking about equity and sustainability. And then if you have any type of policy work, or if you plan to do any policy work, or anything to inform policy, and just in general systems change impact plans. And just because it is such a limited group, I don't see it taking Dash staff very long to review the RFIs. So once they come in, it'll probably be like 1 week to 2 weeks, and then we make the announcement. So that part should happen fairly quickly.
Right. And Stephanie, another imaginative way I've been looking at this that might be helpful for people who are, thinking about RFAs and RFPs in a more traditional way, i.e. trying to respond to what we have in mind to do, which we're trying to maintain maximum flexibility at the expense of being able to help get your creative juices flowing as far as a traditional sort of project proposal might go. So the RFI, the questionnaire that we're going to be sending out, is much more descriptive than prospective on your part. So it's also meant to be a very light lift to fill out, because you'll be responding based on what you have in place and what you're working on all the time, as opposed to needing to create new partnerships and new deliverables right then in order to qualify.
Are there any other questions or comments? Any questions not related to the incubator? We'll take those too. All right, I see some people saying thank you and hopping off. So I can stick around for another minute or so. If you do have a question, feel free to put it in the chat or come on, unmute yourself. I also shared my email, and so I'll do that one more time in the chat. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to email or to set up a one-on-one, just a Teams meeting so we can quick chat. Like I said, this is meant to be a little bit more informal and conversational. So thank you so much for your time and your energy in this work. I appreciate it. It was nice seeing you all.